Hey listeners, it's Alex, your host of EOA, Entrepreneurs of Asia. Today we have part 2 of Alan Ding's interview. You can find part 1 linked below if you care to hear about his background. For part 2, we get to hear more about the practical advice on software engineering and development and some of the principles that drive Alan and his company, SnappyMob. Together, we cover what makes a good software engineer, possible strong signals to look for in software engineers, and what makes a great CTO. Also, is it possible for non-technical people to identify good software engineers? We dig deeper into other interesting topics like writing well, the importance of communication, shipping products fast versus technical debt, and SnappyMob on owning successful products that couldn't really hit escape velocity. Let's dive right in. So let's jump into part 2. Thank you for sharing your story. I want to talk a little bit about engineering.
Okay.
So how can you tell if a person is a good software engineer?
I think well, number one, it's really tough to figure this out when you interview them. It just really is, because you're looking for the wrong signals. But even for us, that's still what we end up having to do.
Well, let's break that down a bit, because even in Silicon Valley, right?
Yep.
I'm sure. What would your critique be on their process and how they interview? And is that what you're saying true there as well?
I think to some extent, yes, because I mean, you can read about it even today about just the typical hiring process of
But you went through it, right?
Interviews. Yeah, I went through it. I mean, I think in Silicon Valley, they aren't looking for what SnappyMob is looking, honestly, during interviews.
That's fair.
To be totally honest, if you're working at engineering-oriented company, which probably is most of them nowadays, they've got a handful of very competent candidates, and I'm trying to filter out, optimize, and try to find the best person. And honestly, in Malaysia, or KL at least, that's not quite the same posture we're taking. We're actually more of, I've got a bunch of candidates who seem on paper, they might be pretty good. They might have potential, maybe.
Yeah.
But we're really trying to filter out, half of these people, especially if we're looking for an experienced person, half of these people may not have a good enough background or self kind of interest to fit in this role. And then competency wise, a lot of people in Malaysia, you'll tend to get this, rate yourself, 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10. You see everyone's a world expert at Java or JavaScript or whatever. And obviously that's not true. And so we're really filtering out and trying to find the people that are reasonable, and then optimizing and trying to find the best among these talented people, actually.
What would those factors be?
If I boil it down, those good software engineer, the main quality I'd say that is a sort of long term is really that self-interest and drive. Meaning in software engineering, as they care about what they do.
How's that demonstrated?
So at least in Malaysia, at least in terms of our own hiring so far, often the signal you can use are personal projects. So personal projects might be they've been working on their own apps. They've got some open source thing, but
perfect. So like looking at their GitHub.
Yeah, but I'd hazard that sometimes these personal projects will be projects where they had to do it. So either like maybe university, everyone had to have a project, or coding bootcamp.
It's there.
Yeah, I'd say I personally treat that as a neutral signal myself. I don't.
But you're still looking at it.
I used to look a lot at it. Nowadays, less so, because typically at that level, you won't really find anything super impressive per se, because the project is typically not their passion projects. Here's the project that's been assigned to you, or here's the template project that everyone who goes through the bootcamp is sort of deriving from sort of a core thing. And, the frank truth is, if you've been a junior dev who's never been doing this in your own time or something, that would have 3 years of personal experience.
So you never come across a junior dev who has a lot of public GitHub.
Oh, we do. But that's where, I'd say the projects, if they were more passion projects.
Passion projects.
Yeah, then I really give that.
That's a good signal.
Good signal. Yeah, I almost say, at least for here, that's a very outstanding signal where it really drives.
And if you're looking for a senior, it's probably got to be mandatory then.
Actually, no, because I'd say a lot of our devs, but I mean, the problem is we're looking for a signal.
Yeah.
We assume there is a signal, but the problem is I'd say sometimes there just isn't. Some of our best developers, in terms of work ethic, in terms of how well they engineer stuff, they've never really had that opportunity to work on personal stuff. And some have been really surprising, even in terms of their background and what they've worked on, right?
Okay.
They've lacked the opportunity to really display it.
But that doesn't disqualify them.
Okay, if I had to be really honest, like here, definitely not.
Yeah.
Honestly, they're really diamonds in the rough. At least for here, for us, we've seen enough so that if they're a bit more senior and they got some experience, we do kind of look at their experience and so on. Like, these are the technologies I've worked on. This is my work experience. Here's some of the software projects or apps I've worked on. But sometimes that's bad signal because, if an app is not so great, right? Is it their fault or is it the app is bad in terms of design? They didn't design it, and so on. So, at least for us, we might not be as rigorous as some other companies, I think, at least in terms of that screening and calling you for an interview. But then, as soon as that interview, we're pretty good, and we can rapidly figure out the aspects of development or aspects of a software engineer.
At this point, you've probably gone through hundreds, if not thousands, of candidates.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can see the patterns.
Yeah, and at least in Malaysia, I think the candidates don't game the interview or prepare. Or in terms of gaming, so they don't go read a handbook.
Do you find people who actually prepare overly and they can game? Because I find that's wholly lacking in general.
Not much in terms of software developers, actually.
Yeah.
It's not like they took a book and here's how to pass an interview. I actually did that myself. Like,
I think a lot of people, that's what most people did probably in the States, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And here I find, no, definitely not.
More just showing up, right?
Yeah, more showing up. I think we're lucky in the sense that if I get FaceTime with one of the applicants, in terms of competency level and so on, we'll generally be able to figure the truth of it very quickly. Not even necessarily technical interview, whiteboard problem or anything like that yet. But I'd say at least my view of things here in terms of how we hire, we really do look self-drive, self-passion, which one signal is personal projects that they can either show or talk about. It's a really good signal just because of the dearth of it compared to other people. But that's not the only signal. And so then it also comes down to if they lack that when we talk to them in terms of experience. Yeah. It gets a bit harder to probe and you'll get duds. It's a difficult process. I generally don't get too technical myself.
No whiteboarding.
Not much.
Oh, so you do a little bit.
Back before COVID, a bit more. Now just because it's over Zoom, it's a bit tougher in terms of logistics. But just having a casual conversation, you very quickly figure out.
You get a good feel.
Yeah. And I'd say it's pretty educated because they don't game. Well, that's not what we've seen. They don't game it. And it's not necessarily memorization. We don't really test for that. But to describe this kind of scenario, how, what's your experience with this kind of problem? And just based on their response to it, I'd say we're probably good at picking up signal of when people really know what they're talking about. And what we look for is really technical depth in a sense for a mobile app. You do a lot of UI engineering when you build a mobile app. So something, and the question might be, how would you sort of design, how everything goes.
You're seeing how they think
together. Yeah. And then there's no right or wrong answer. So based on that kind of discussion, then typically, you can kind of get a good feel for what they know.
If they're in the top percent, though, what does their GitHub kind of look like? Are you still getting like many projects with a lot of forks, or?
Actually, no. I think because forking and how popular a project is, honestly, it might be a signal of how good they are at marketing. Maybe.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Because we don't expect you have a really popular open source project. Because I'd be happy if they did, but I'd say it's also very.
It's just part of it, I guess.
It's unlikely to get to that level, actually.
And what about for your GitHub?
I don't code much anymore, but I used to have a pretty popular project called Kiwi. So that was.
So you're the founder of Kiwi, or what is Kiwi?
Kiwi is open source BDD. You can think of it as a TDD, test driven development library.
Okay, what does that mean for
iOS? It's this development approach where instead of jumping in and developing features and trying to code up a solution, the approach you take is you actually write a test to validate what the solution needs to do first. And then when you write the test first, your solution starts out by failing every test because you've not written any part of the solution yet. And then after you've written the validation or test case for bits of the solution, then you build out bits of the solution. So that's sort of very different from a typical development approach where typically you just like start writing code and
and then you build tests afterwards.
Yep. And so I've been at one extreme in terms of the creator of a library that does testing that got pretty popular, that was integrated. Support was integrated into Xcode, into app code by JetBrains. It got a slide.
Oh, wow.
There's been a book written about it, and it got featured on. If you go into WWDC, the book was.
That seems pretty big.
Yeah. So then the project, I made it open source. Worked with a lot of well-known personalities actually on the project.
Was that your most successful passion project?
Yeah, I'd say probably open source project. I mean, this is the only one where I really focused on it, and they got popular. Like nowadays, it's less used just because of the ecosystem has moved on.
Mature. Okay.
Yeah, but it also actually kind of got me a job at Egenic.
I see. So you talked about that in the interview.
Yeah, this was one thing that was highlighted, and it's there for everyone to see. There's this library. If you go look, you can see how I code. And
it definitely seems you were more prolific around 2013 era. A lot of your more popular forks were from that time period.
Yeah, actually, and even then, that was after I was doing less on it already because I developed it mostly in 10 and 11, I think. And then at some point, it got picked up by the community a lot, and it was used like pretty widely. A lot of companies you know about. I think like at some point Lyft used it. And
oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a tool.
It's just a tool.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty fascinating, though.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty popular. I mean, there were 3 pretty popular testing. Solutions. This was one of them.
When you look at assessing software engineers or potential candidates, do you ever see if they do any writing?
I'd say yes, but I think this is that one piece that's missing. If you ask me what's the biggest skill I'd want to see, it's passion, but skill wise, I'd say sort of communication and writing in the abstract, not just.
Okay, so you're seeing how they could put written thought and structure it.
In your native tongue, go write an email and communicate this,
Okay.
And this is where most developers struggle with this aspect a lot. But I think this is key because then it's a bit abstract, but when you develop code or whatever, like, devs will think about maintainability or how clean, whatever clean means, in quotes.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it comes down to communication. If you want to be very technical about it, you're communicating with the machine or you're communicating to your fellow developers or yourself in the future. And,
and I guess, So writing is basically a proxy to kind of see how you communicate.
Yeah. And that comes along with all the other stuff along with it, which is, empathy, you're writing for other people, how you name things, how you, how someone uses this thing you wrote. There's a confluence of a bunch of useful traits.
Yeah, because I came across your Medium account, but I was hoping for some juicy, well-written articles, but I couldn't find any posts.
I almost don't even remember a Medium account, but I am.
You have a blog, though. You have a microblog, but also the company blog. I mean, the company blog is more prolific.
Actually, you know what? Well, the company blog, I've written one or two or contributed to just one or two little tiny parts of it. It's mostly
the team.
The team, but I'm working with I'm working on resuscitating. This
writing.
Yes, doing a bit more writing.
I need to do that as well.
Yes. I actually started here. I'll do a plug. So one of our co-founders of the company, his name is Vito.
Okay.
So I'm trying to do this pair blogging thing with him.
Interesting. Okay? And how does that work?
We had the first post out last week.
Where can I find it?
VitoChin.com.
Okay, VitoChin.com.
Yeah. Vito's like an awesome guy.
Vito sounds Italian.
He, well, that's not the most interesting part of his name. Like his name's actually Vito Brain.
Vito Brain.
Chin. Not Vito Brian.
Brain Chin. Okay.
Like brain. With the spelling, brain.
Definitely. Okay.
Vito is a senior architect at Microsoft Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah. Like he's a proper hardcore guy. Like you can go read his blog. He's one of the co-founders of the company. So we thought it'd be a good idea to do this pair blogging thing where we'd have not podcasts, but kind of me and him will blog on his blog, talk about something techie,
fair
thing,
enough.
I think.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the same on mine.
Yeah.
But of course that it is necessary for me to have a blog again before that.
I mean, I definitely came across a lot of famous programmers, and a lot of them are very good writers.
Actually, I honestly, the ones I respect the most, and I think this actually did come about from my experience with Peter, who was that lead consultant from earlier.
Yeah.
He was, I'd say he's the best writer that I personally know. Like, I actually know this.
Yeah, you actually
person.
know the guy. Yeah.
I didn't appreciate it at first, but now and back then over time was when I would really come to
appreciate
figure out this is that skill that
it's a really important skill.
Yeah, and I'm not good, and I need to
improve it.
And you need focus, and you can go read his blog at hingens.com. It's really HINTJENS.com.
Yeah.
He's passed away from cancer, but if you go read his blog, his writing is this top notch, and because I worked with him so closely, I know how effortless it was
for him,
which is why I'm very envious.
It's hard. It's a skill you have to develop.
Exactly. Yeah. And he has a very interesting background, but he's, again, I kid you not, so we were in Texas, Richardson, I guess, in some bar, and I don't know how it came about or whatever, but wow, Peter, you're really smart, and he's, I'm a genius. He was not really humble, I guess, but I'm a genius, here's my Mensa membership. And then
he has the proof.
he shows you his Mensa membership, and I'm okay.
That's fair.
That's fair, So really interesting character, but he really made me appreciate
writing,
how important it is, and communication as a whole for developers. That we try to instill. Your job is actually communication. You just don't realize it necessarily. You're very focused on this one aspect of it. But if you want to get to this top level, just think of all the personalities that you follow in the tech circles and whatever, all the stuff you read and so on. There's the people who are really good who don't write or don't share.
Yeah.
They're still really good, but they're probably not people you follow, because the obvious ones that you follow, that you are a fan of, that you respect them so much, they're out there. They've created stuff, they've written stuff. You can, if you go back, often you can see their early stuff was not as good as, of course, the current stuff. And that's why that's such an important skill. Because your work will get better.
Correct.
It simply will.
So you have to have passion projects. You have to communicate well. Your writing has to be good. Yeah.
Sometimes with communication, we do get people who, I'll say literally, first minute I talk to them, okay, they probably have technical background. Oh, they went to Berkeley. Okay, fine. However bad they are, if they got through that, they're probably okay.
Yeah. Because there's definitely a minimum to pass. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's that threshold.
Okay.
And so I don't want to focus on that. In the first minute, literally, I kind of had the intuition. They're probably a lock. Give them an offer already.
Yeah.
It's only just because of how unique that experience is. Because often that doesn't happen. And I'll start talking, tell me about this project. And then they can just describe the no prompting or anything. They just describe the problems they solve. And so you obviously know, okay, they're really good at making it up, in which case it's still kind of okay, I guess. They know what they're doing, for their level.
Correct.
Yeah. And then first to in Malaysia, it's often relative. Someone here, readjust a bit and look more for potential, how well their thought process is.
So you would actually get bonus points if they were very active on Stack Overflow then, because they would be writing, answering, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they were, that's very high signal ratio, right? Someone's asking a question and, they're answering it. It could even be not quite a good answer, but good enough.
What does a good Stack Overflow profile look like? So you have a 1,323 reputation. What does that mean?
Oh, that's actually really low now. So I'm not really active on Stack, but back then you got points by answering questions for the most part.
Gamified it.
Yeah, gamified a bit. And nowadays that's a lot more. if you're a moderator, you get points if you,
Okay.
you know, moderate things. If you're the first person to do this, if you
So it's more of an amalgamation of being active.
active,
and,
yeah, it's a really engagement now.
Okay.
I think
Yeah, yeah.
but not to detract anyone.
But there's also a quality aspect to it too.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think so back then, at least for myself, I get points for this was when I was into answering stuff, I guess, which is nowadays not quite as much. But so I'd answer a few questions about some iOS development topic, and I guess just one or two good answers over many years. Somehow you just get a bunch of points.
But you got high reach though, for you only answered, I think, 10 answers, but you had 62K reach, which means a lot of people are reading it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think one of I wrote an answer to it. I think even today, if you go Google,
it'll pop up.
How do you use this thing, right?
Yeah.
Or when to use this thing, then there'll be the first answer. So maybe that's why.
So that's the one that kept on populating.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
That's
good.
I guess that helps people. But that's that kind of question that if one of your devs did manage to answer thing to that level, that's the kind of signal that'd be really good. Because from a day-to-day job perspective, you'd never really need to understand that part.
Yes, I mean it's not about the answer itself, but what they're doing, right?
Yeah. To get there, you had to dive pretty deep into understanding this aspect of iOS development, versus your day to day, which is build a few screens, implement some logic. Like even if you've been doing lots and lots of different projects, that's pretty good signal. If someone has shown some indication of, I know this thing more than most people, that I think it does indicate they're able to go pretty advanced in one topic, which is indicative that they can probably do the same for different problems. So that's also pretty good, I think.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, there is some hope, if you're not from a technical background, to being able to identify a good software engineer by looking at their passion projects, looking at their communication, and looking at some of these signals we're talking about.
Yeah, and especially at least to me, would be really good. They really just rise up the pile. Yeah. In terms of this is someone I need.
The probabilities already are increasing.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, there's enough signal there that sometimes if you look at a GitHub project, personal project, right? If you look at it, I guess it'd be a bit difficult if you're not technical. But if you looked at it and you got help from someone who's technical, or myself, or looked at it, I'd be like, okay, if they worked on this themselves, okay, they are better than the team you already have. So go hire them if they are a character fit. That's actually very easy to see, because if they really have the project,
you need a technical background to do that, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You kind of look at it and you'd be able to tell, but then you evaluate for different theories.
So that's the tricky part for so you have techniques to increase probability, but at the end of the day, you will never know for sure unless you can find someone you think you trust. And how would you identify that person then? Yeah.
So I guess that's where, if you have, co-founder that's technical.
But you have to blindly trust them still.
Yeah, it's faith, right? And I mean, sometimes
that's crazy.
I think that's also the difficult part, because if you're coming from a position of you have a co-founder that's technical, but they also have just 2 years of experience, to be fair, they might also not have a good sense of things.
It's a force of function of time.
Yeah.
For the nature of engineering. Yeah. There's just some things you have to get over experience.
Yep, exactly. And that intuition is very hard to develop without experience. And I think that maybe a good thing here is we've seen it over the years, because we've been here 8 years now, that pool of people, the ecosystem, number of companies, whatnot, has been on the rise.
From your assessment, this is what you're seeing.
Oh, it's very tangible, really clearly. And
can you make a broader statement to the region, or just what you're seeing here?
I'd say region for sure, but that's not because of personal experience. This is more from observation.
Okay.
But every time I go to Singapore, if I happen to be in some technical conversation, I mean, they've got top-notch people just in general. Very strong people. I mean,
there's a few big tech companies who actually have software teams here in Singapore. So I mean, it does make sense.
Unlike Malaysia, where all these companies they have a sales presence here.
Yeah, I think very few have technical teams here.
Yeah, I mean, if I was gonna establish a base in the region, and this an R&D presence, to some extent, you have this clear difference in access to talent.
Yeah.
In Malaysia versus Singapore. So why go for Malaysia? I mean, if you don't have any other strings pulling you in this direction, that, you know, incentives or emotional or cost. I think cost maybe depending on your kind of market, but then again, if you're very successful,
if you're a lot of money, then you're just going to go for Singapore, right?
Yeah, I mean, because in the end, for a large enterprise company, that cost is negligible anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's nothing, right?
But the startup world's very different.
In startup world, I'd say but even then, you know, that risk of talent, I guess. And I'm not saying this to be
fair, you're based here, Malaysia, right? So you have some credibility, I guess.
Yeah. I just say it'd be obviously a lot easier in terms of talent to access a larger pool, and also probably more competition. You know? But you're saying general competency, you know, not whether you're a nice guy or not. You know, general, what do they know, and you know how well-rounded their experiences. I'd say that'd be clearly a big difference versus here, you know, what we expect here. You know, even on paper, sometimes we get candidates who are really, really good at software engineering or computer science, and they can't answer really basic things. You know, fresh out of school.
It's because they're fresh, right? Or why is this?
Well, fresh out of school, I expect the stuff you learned in school to still be there.
Yeah, correct.
And sometimes,
that's
even though,
missing.
You know, A+, you know, whatever, it's...
they were just doing it for doing it and not really caring about it probably, right?
Yeah, or not. And that's why I don't really blame them, because I've never been in those shoes, you know. If you took whatever course and it was just boring, it's not... The content was like not engaging or whatever. Like you don't even know that that's supposed to be interesting. You know?
That's why you talk about passion projects. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Look, if I see someone with a really good passion project, you know, and when I say really good, I don't mean it has to be really successful or even the code that's really good. Because I don't expect anyone who's been coding for like 2 years to write really good code. Honestly, you just don't know yet you know, what it means. But if you can see that energy put in and trying to solve problems,
that's the most important thing. They were chasing solving a problem and getting somewhere, learning and growing.
Yeah. Right? And our best people will be people who either didn't complete school or academically nothing outstanding per se. Yeah. But they're just so good and inspiring because they have this project they worked on, and that translates to when they work on our projects, same thing. They'll have the drive. You don't need to push them and tell them, hey, this is important. You know, they'll want to solve it well because you don't need to tell them it's important to, you know, solve this in a good way or something that they want to. They have to, you know, and it's a lot easier to deal with that.
True. Yeah. So we identified what is a good potential software engineer, some certain signals. Yeah. What makes a great CTO versus a good CTO?
I feel it's very self-serving to answer this because I'm nominally our CTO as well. And I guess, let's say, you know, we have to help some other company find a CTO or something like that, which we kind of have actually helped. I'd say, again, depends on type of company. Hey, are you hiring CTO for our kind of company? You know, like
It's very different, actually. You're right.
It's just product company, you know? Yeah. So I'd say that there's the foundational stuff, which is what does the CTO do? At some startups, it might be glorified coder, you know, the only coder or the lead coder or whatever.
So definition's wrong. Or different definition, sorry. It's not necessarily wrong. It's different need.
Yeah. And at that point of the life cycle for that company, that's the job, you know, they are focused on that.
That's a really good point. So when you're thinking about what is a good or great CTO, you have to think about the life cycle and what applies in the problem in the industry.
Yeah. And a lot of people think, CTO is the person who can do with computers or code or whatever. And that can be actually fine for that early stage.
For a certain early stage,
early stage. But then you got to think of, well, why do you think you need a CTO? What's their role, right? Because, you know, that kind of maps to what you want them to be good at. So first thing I'd say is they'll be in charge of culture, you know.
Culture, okay.
Right.
Of the team.
Yeah, because culture is this thing, you know, it's very high leverage, meaning...
Are you saying general culture or culture of technology?
Well, I think the general culture, they have to fit as well. But then culture in terms of technology, which probably for most startups or companies will cover software development. Yeah. It might cover, a lot of companies we've seen, it covers product development as well, which is a bit unfortunate, meaning product management.
So you already, so you're making a good point. So you're saying culture of technology, but sometimes because of if it's an early stage, there is a separate function that they might have to pick up, which is not always, maybe not with their skill set, right?
Yeah,
but they still have to do product,
right? I'd actually say that's the most uncommon skill set.
Product.
to find. But that's the thing, that no matter how senior or junior someone is, it's almost not a function of how senior, how much experience you have, the amount of care you have for
empathy.
product. Yeah, empathy and really wanting to do a good job.
Yeah.
That's something that sometimes we have to put into the heads of our team members. This button is obviously in the wrong place. Why is a team of 4 senior people and 6 mid-level people? Why does this seem the more people there are on this team, the more lax the product becomes,
Yeah, so it's part of culture.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So being responsible for culture
Yep.
from a technical standpoint, picking up a product piece as well.
Yep. And then I'd say, apart from that, CTO, I mean, they'll generally be the person making technology choices.
Okay, so
in
what
general.
kind of technology to build out the product?
Yeah, and that really, they'll often be the entire stack, meaning level things or high-level technology choices. What kind of platform and programming languages and library, and tooling and
Style,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then style would be more on the low-level stuff. Like, what's your coding style? What's important? Is there any style? What do you want to enforce in terms of, how
So
people
it's
do
very
things?
broad.
Yeah,
very
and
broad.
so it's really broad. And so the struggle is that there's the function of experience that I think you need to have.
Yeah.
And not only just experience. One, you must care, obviously, if you want to be good. If you don't care, then no matter what, it doesn't matter. But if the CTO has had lots of exposure, doesn't necessarily mean their own work per se, but they've really encountered lots of stuff from readings or projects they participate in, open source or whatever. But they have a lot of experience in terms of how things are done in different contexts. I think that's important because when for example, if you're a startup, right, you deal with lots of problems that are new to you.
Yeah.
Every day. That's
Correct.
what you're dealing with. And really, you're trusting your CTO. Do this in a fashion that is viable for us.
Yeah.
Can they do it or not? Well, experience helps, obviously.
Yeah.
How smart they are kind of helps. How good they are at sort of having that proactiveness. And I don't know this, but, I can research it and really try to figure it out,
Initiative.
Yeah, that initiative. Yeah.
Yeah.
To do it. And then the initiative pairs really well with experience and intuition when you got more of it as well. You can iterate to good enough a lot quicker and more safely.
That's more of the technical stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So technical chops.
Yeah. And then you also, I think most of what we've seen, they're usually also in charge of process for development.
Okay. So using agile or
using
whatever
agile
method.
or
Scrum,
how do you
whatever.
code review,
code reviews.
So high levels, development methodology, and then lower levels, how are reviews done? Do we do reviews? When do we do it? How do we deploy stuff like that?
Yeah.
And so, and then there's all these skill sets, just both skill and experience that you'd want them to be good at. And for your CTO, I mean, if you're talking about a really experienced person, it's a lot easier for them to check these boxes. But if you're a startup and you've got your partner or the people you have access to, they're not experienced, right? I don't think it's a showstopper because again, the main thing is you can go learn.
You can learn. You will evolve. You either will keep up or you don't. Right?
Exactly. And some people I'll use the word good. Some people get good really fast.
Okay.
If they care.
Yeah.
We've seen that. Where someone just jumps. 1 year and all of a sudden
they're really good.
Yeah, they're really good. And so I think that's really good signing. And then finally, for CTO, unfortunately, for the most part, they have to interact with people.
I was hoping you would say that.
So that's tough for a lot of devs.
I think that's very critical, though, right?
It's critical. It is
because you're coordinating not even your team internally, but across up and down, all around your customers, users.
Well, I've seen companies where the CTO ends up being
more of a technical role, right?
Yeah, a person. The man behind the curtain kind of thing.
The Wizard of Oz.
I'm not kidding. And it's very toxic. It's really, not conducive to a kind
of
tough culture. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that speaks back to the culture piece. And I guess all those elements you talk about of what makes a great CTO, as you said, depending on your stage, ideally, if you get all of them, that's great. But, if not, hopefully you can grow into them and then be measured against those. And
I mean, if you take the example of, look, we got to compromise. You can't get someone with experience.
Yeah.
A lot of commercial experience, maybe, because you're early stage or you just got buddies or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then what do you look for? Then I'd start looking for people that really care, because that culture that they will sort of bring into the team, or disseminate to other team members, that sort of drive. I think that's stuff that, again, it's very orthogonal to experience. And so even if they don't have too much experience, but you can see that in them, I think that's something that kind of checks one of the boxes. Again, because you're not looking for perfect, you're looking for good enough CTO, probably.
Yeah. But hopefully it can become great.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, so that check the boxes. And then I'd say if you're non-technical, you're at a disadvantage, but it's good even if they are not that experienced yet, that you can see that, they are techie and they've got the foundations really good.
Looking at the things that increase the probability we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
They'd have to have those signals.
Yeah. Because I think you can actually be a good CTO with development experience, especially when you get to a later stage.
Well, I guess that's fair. Because you might have someone who's just focused as the tech side, like VP of tech or something, or I don't know if it's the role, tech lead.
Yeah, right? Engineering lead.
Yeah.
And so maybe they're focused on that. But then, at more established companies, CTO, the most important kind of decision they might make is, what's the approach for a solution for this part of the project? And that's the most impactful thing they do, not develop code.
Yeah, not the implementation.
Like that, or tell the team, what to use for this. That's it,
Yeah.
And that's probably.
But it's also like, tell the team what to use, but they have to have a buy-in, they have to believe it.
Yeah.
They have to be communicated in the right way.
Yeah. And so that's why, obviously, if you're a really good developer, it really helps buy-in.
I guess in the world of tech, yes, right? Because a lot of junior developers will look up to that tech kind of guy who's the authority where they could learn from.
Yep. Exactly.
So I guess, that is a shortcut, but lots of times that shortcut could be the weakness if they haven't developed the other aspects we talked about.
Yep.
Right. So that's part of the growth, I guess.
Yep, definitely.
So let's, we talked about what's a good engineer, what's a great CTO. What are your thoughts on shipping fast and accumulating debt versus ensuring quality and moving slower?
Right. So I got two perspectives on this. So one is, at least for our client projects, the business needs of the clients that we have for their projects.
Okay.
And at least in our experience, obviously, right, if you think about it, the answer is, I want it as soon as possible.
Of course. That's always the same conversation.
Obviously. Like, who's going to say, I don't really need it this year. So that's sort of almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think we're a bit more pragmatic now, where this client needs something on the market by this date, and there are other levers and gears that have made that decision. And then the team, we're dealing with the problem of deliver something and, deliver it the best it can be. This is typically the constraint we're actually working. And if, those dates can't move, and we always talk to the client and say, hey, can we have a bit more time for this? To fulfill the requirements, that's always obvious, but then do it well, and so that's the less tangible part. And then often that's, when things are not viable, we talk about, look, this is not going to happen. Do we de-scope a bit, or do we kind of push the timeline a bit? And the reason I kind of frame this as a separate scenario is because this just comes up time and time again for client projects.
The reason why I bring it up, because in the world of Silicon Valley and startups, even VCs, it's a high signal if you can ship fast.
Exactly.
And some of the best products I've been using, so like the software I'm using for editing the podcast, Descript, they just ship amazingly fast. They solve the problems like I haven't seen. So like, is it possible to ship fast with no debt, or in a way that massively reduces debt? Because you're talking in a client agency relationship, but in a world where it could be life or death, or you need to blitzscale, or like we're talking about high growth. I feel like where is this right and wrong?
Right. I think it is possible to ship fast and deliver rapidly, but you pick your battles, which basically means tighten the scope, be really narrow in what you do. When we do client projects, we actually talk to clients about this as well, which is, especially if they are more startup-y, here's your laundry list of what you need. And if this is not in the product, does it fail? Literally everyone we talk to, corporate or startup or whatever, they'll say, oh, this is our MVP. This is the MVP.
So essentially narrow the scope and you can move faster.
Well, I think you move at the same speed, but you'll you'll be more realistic in a sense. Because if the team is working just nonstop anyway, right? They're almost unhealthily. They work at a certain rate. You can't
because there's the client notion that if you just whip them harder, they'll crank out faster. But that's not true.
No. I mean,
how does that work then for people to understand?
I mean, let's say if you're saying typical hours for this region, 8 hours a day kind of thing. 95, 96, whatever, somewhere around that range. That's probably very reasonable and typical. Also, what I've seen around the world, you get a good amount of productivity. It's very fuzzy productivity, but things that need to get delivered, for the most part, get delivered on time if you have realistic expectations. And if you push your team harder, you can. If they work more, you get more out of it.
And quality will suffer, or do you think it could be stable if depending?
Quality suffers. Yeah, quality suffers. You get diminishing returns. But I mean, if your goal is get these features out sooner and develop it sooner, and if there's a bug that affects 1% of users, but is a big challenge to solve, honestly, from a business perspective, I'd be, the responsible thing to do is ship it. But then the more you push your team, it plateaus. You get people who burn out. You get quality that's less good.
So it's what you're telling me. It's almost an inescapable paradigm.
Yeah.
The trade-off of speed and quality.
Yeah.
You just, if you're shipping really fast, but no matter what, even if on the surface the product feels and looks great, feels flawless from a UX perspective, you're telling me massively behind there's a big pile of debt that's not been paid yet. Yeah,
well, you definitely build up debt. I mean, I've never seen any project that doesn't have debt, even the best project that has like so much debt. But the rate of debt will increase the more you kind of push your timeline, push your team. You don't escape that. And from the CTO perspective, again, if I had my CTO hat on here, I might say, what? I don't care.
Just roll.
I only care when the debt affects
the business,
right?
And to be fair, a lot of blitz-scaled Silicon Valley companies have done this. And they got to a point where they had to revamp everything after being $1 billion company.
Yeah. So what? I don't care. So, number one, I have money then. Number two, someone else is doing it. It's not like I'm staying awake because of it. So, so what, right?
Okay. So how does that fit in with your philosophy then?
At least for us, we're a bit pragmatic about business, especially with clients where they can make a decision. Yeah. And we'll say, are you sure you need this? Really? Yeah. Are you sure you need this thing? Because you pay us for it. People work on it. It just makes things more complex. So
it's a very silly notion as a CTO coming in to be just holding on to the notion of it has to be a certain way, quality and no building debt. Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the situation, right?
I think it's good to have that as the North Star. I don't want to compromise. Things need to be really good. If they start from there, I think it's pretty good in the sense that they care. Your job is really not to do the best job ever within the context of business. It's really with all these other constraints of marketing, sales, money, whatever it is, to do good job that buys us time or opportunity later. And that's what you're optimizing for.
It can't be purely from a only tech view. You have to be very holistic and look at the whole ecosystem to make that kind of decision.
Especially as a CTO.
When to push or pull.
And I mean, it's good if they innately have that passion, but
that's not easy though, right?
But it's toxic if you become the person that's every single thing has to be done right at the expense of everything else.
Then you're missing the point.
You're not monetizing your technology culture,
Correct.
You're leveraging it, It's helping you get somewhere.
I think that's a tough framework, and it's almost an art, it's balancing between so many different moving parts and taking risks, trying to make calculated risks. And it's always going to be hard to say what's right or wrong until maybe even decades later, and still might be clear. Right?
And sometimes you're just picking from a bad set of choices. Sometimes you really don't have many options, and you're just trying to figure out what won't hurt you like really badly at this point in time.
Fair enough. Are we going to skip the story of Pieter Hitchens?
I'll save. I need some content for my future blog.
Okay, fine. So I'll pull a quote from the blog that you wrote though.
Okay.
Which is kind of tied to the story, I guess. But I'm sure if someone Googles, they might find it. Unless you remove it after this.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
But you said software isn't about code. Software is about people.
Oh yeah.
So can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, actually, this I didn't come up with this. This is Peter Hingens.
Oh, Peter. Okay,
Yeah.
that's his quote.
That's his quote.
Yeah.
And so now I appreciate it more. And I'm sure non-technical people appreciate it. The hardest thing in the business of this software development, the technology that is related to software. A lot of technology problems are somewhat commoditized now, meaning you pay money, you can solve them. But if you're building your own startup company and so on, one problem that just keeps coming up over and over again in terms of software development, product development is people. In fact, software, it's almost nice. There's a problem, and you've got this very structured set of requirements or formal requirements.
Yeah.
Like it has to do this.
It's tangible.
Yeah, it's very
you either
tangible.
can do it or you can't.
Yeah, it's very easy to say like yes
yeah.
or no, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to do it, but either in the end, it's going to happen or not.
Yeah, as long as it's viable, it's
Yeah.
you know, it's a function of put in resources and you know at some point maybe it can get done. But the toughest part is really the people aspect to it. Finding the people who are good enough to build, you know, hire the right people. But then the next challenge is you hired 5 really good people. It's surprising. Like I've seen like companies that just expect hire 5 good devs. Okay, go do work, go build stuff.
Yeah.
And they expect things to happen and
without doing the management or the
any kind of coordination or whatever. I mean, if you're lucky, 2 good devs, they work together, they pump out stuff, they change the world. Possible. Yeah. 3, less
likely.
4, less possible. Like every single person makes it less likely, and
it's a team sport.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. A lot of devs typically will be more on the introverted side. Will have certain characteristics. If they're good devs, like other personal characteristics that make them less good in terms of collaboration. Yeah. Sometimes. And so I guess that's a challenge, which is on a typical challenging software project, the tough part is not really writing the software per se, because you can get like really great coders and so on. But
I mean, everyone will converge to good standard.
Yeah, and it's not to take away like really good coders. It's not very easy to fight.
Of course,
they are really good, and you could do practice for 10 years and not be as good as them.
Yes,
But coordinating the efforts, because typically a large problem, no matter how good they are, they can't just do everything by themselves.
Yeah.
And then the problem becomes...
What about people then?
People. Yeah. Coordinating the efforts. I've got 4 good people. Now I've got the even tougher problem of making sure they work well together. They work on different things.
Yeah.
They talk to each other and so on. And that really is people kind of management.
Yeah. Because the reason why that quote stuck out to me, because do you remember that back when Google had that internal manifesto fiasco?
Yep.
Yeah, right. So, and then one of the responses from one of the, I guess, managers or senior leaders there was, he was very insightful, where he said, at some point, as you rise through the ranks as an engineer, your titles are first letters and numbers, and then they start just becoming words. Yep. Right. But in order to become words, it's because you have to be good at people, because someone's thinking for you. Yep. Right. And I thought it was a pretty good response to the misunderstanding of that one guy had, right? So, and that quote just, kind of stuck out to me as being the same.
And then, if you're talking about like CTO even, at a larger organization, right? You start, your job shifts more towards culture, process, people, and that's it. You can find really good engineering guys, pay them money, I guess, but same as like scaling up the company, because we've grown, before we had 10, and then we had 20, and then 30, 40, and so on. Each time we scaled up, at our scale still, there's every single individual have different characteristics.
Would you say it's trying to corral cats, or? Everyone's very independent.
Yeah, like very independent. Yeah, different-minded people with different experiences and practices from past.
So take your whole career experience. You weren't always in leadership. Now, if you look back now, or even when you were in leadership, is this something that's always consistent across all teams and companies and countries?
I can see it now, where I do appreciate a lot of my ex-bosses.
You could learn from them, how to handle keeping the team together and being a leader.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say back then you wouldn't appreciate it, because it's just,
you're in the grind. You're doing
in the grind, right? Yeah. You don't see what they're doing, whatever. But now you do.
But they're doing a lot of thinking for you.
Yeah, they they're directing you very well.
Especially for tech, right?
Yep.
They're doing that thinking for you so you could just focus and be productive.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you were to do it, you'd probably just be all over the place and not be as efficient, right?
Yeah. That's what I do now. I'm just not productive at all. And but that's the thing I appreciate the most, I think, because I can see now, they were really get stuff done, but they were helping you.
But I'm sure you can go back and talk to them on that level now. And I'm sure you do, right? You stay in touch with them and you learn from them?
Yeah. The e-gen guys, like, I relish when I get to like chat about them, about like development, business topics. This is very interesting. Now I understand a bit more this side of things. Yeah. And it is very different. Actually, that was like the biggest challenge, ongoing challenge, even today, in terms of like dealing with this part of the business.
I think all founders, all entrepreneurs definitely face that.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So let's close off with one last topic. Do you want to talk about the time you guys were owning products, or do you want to talk about design?
Maybe let's pick products, just since you mentioned it first.
Sure. Because before, back in 2015, you kind of shifted. You were agency, then you wanted to build your own products.
Yep.
And even today, I guess you also have hybrid model where you have clients, but you also do have products.
Yep. I mean, back then, we were doing products. That was, the initial things the founders wanted to do as well, which is like, we also want to make like really successful apps and stuff. And
were you inspired from your previous experiences?
I wouldn't say inspired, but we were really into it because, we were, into apps in general. That's why
so you wanted to just build really great apps with scale and become big.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but we had no, or maybe I should say I had no business experience, a sense of like what to do, like, how to market things.
But you were able to pull the product together. You saw a problem.
Yeah. We
pinpoint.
We could build a product, and
you did, right? Saved 2.
Yeah. So
right?
we built Saved and Save 2, and then like
those got traction though, right? Actually, a lot of downloads.
Yeah, like 2 especially. And honestly, this shows like how immature we were. Very happy with the design of it, development of it. Obviously
being satisfied with your product.
Yeah, we Saved 2. We did a bit of the business side of things, like
what's the comparable to Save 2?
You mean in terms of
what is Save 2 basically?
Oh, okay. It's a sort of like expense and budget tracker, which just means like you record like things you spend on and set budgets.
So expense tracking, is it
personal,
close to Expensify or?
Not really, because Expensify is more like keep track of and submit expenses.
More like Mint.
More like Mint. Yeah, but a very manual version of it.
So you had this product.
Yeah, and we only got success honestly because we did a bit of like outreach and PR and got
marketing.
Yeah, got like good features by Apple, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And there's an element of being fortunate there as well to get.
So it did get traction, got a lot of downloads.
Yeah, got a lot of downloads. Did pretty well commercially. I mean, enough to pay for development, pay us back.
Was the business model wrong?
I think the business model was okay for the time.
I mean, at the time period, I think that's what people kind of knew. So you basically put a price in the App Store.
Yeah.
Right? It was like $4.99 or something.
Yeah. Don't do it today. You wouldn't do it today.
Yeah. No one does that.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So
I guess you were following what was at the time.
Yep, correct. And if we kind of continue, we'd probably evolve as well.
Oh, that's fair. Okay.
Yep. We just evolve with like the economics of
you would switch it to subscription, right?
Yeah, subscription,
whatever,
or maybe some service thing where the app is free and then you're gonna pay for data or sharing. I don't know, something like that. So we probably evolve it, but honestly, we lost a bit of steam due to like risk. We're like, okay, this is making money because we got well featured. It's like number one market. If you go to App Store app, you see it, and it was like, wow, that's for like the next version doesn't get featured or doesn't do that well.
Oh man, so you were afraid of that. Were you even looking at like retention data and what was valuable in the product at least?
We were, because we were slowly like adding more features and
you're iterating,
improving and so on. And so, but how to put it, like if we didn't get featured and get this like big spike in terms of downloads, we probably wouldn't, like, it probably covered the cost maybe. If that, but nowhere near like sustainable or profitable.
Yeah.
And so it just felt like a very big risk.
And you didn't think about getting funding or?
Not seriously. We did get like, actually,
you entertained it though.
We did like people come in and ask actually, like in some, like government agencies and so on.
Yeah.
But then around that time was when, we started actually getting more like
Client work.
Like serious
so you had to
inquiries.
choose.
So we really had to choose.
That's tough.
Yeah. Maybe safer in terms of it'll be,
More stable.
yeah, you will get paid, this amount, it doesn't.
It depends on what your priorities were and what your risks were back then, I guess.
Yeah. It's really risk analysis. And it's like what we're comfortable with at that point in time.
Do you think you guys were too risk conservative?
I think not, because we like before that, right? Before Save 2,
Yeah.
we were like kind of bleeding, and we had that pain, So at that point of time, we were like,
If no one was going to save you, then it kind of made sense to go for profitability.
yeah.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah. And then, I wouldn't even say profitability, but do client work and
That would feed you and you would sustain.
Yeah, sustainable. Sustainable and be more stable in that sense. And then, and so we chose that path, and
No regrets.
No regrets. It's been a few years, but then I think now we're at the stage to where we're able to
Take moonshots now?
Yeah, we're able to
Yeah.
sort of self-fund like small bets, maybe.
Exactly. So you could take smaller bets, do more iterations.
Yep. And we know how to do things a bit better now, just in terms of
that's
general
fair.
development.
So essentially, you got to get to a point where you built a machine that could run.
Yeah.
I mean, like you are, from what I'm hearing, you're kind of doing a lot yourself, and you need to probably learn how to make that more efficient.
Yep.
But once you figure that out,
Yep.
then you have more time to go back to looking to owning products.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. And so that's like on our radar, because in terms of client work, we're fairly stable now, post COVID, I think.
And you must definitely see a lot of gaps though, right? All the client work, all the problems you're seeing, there's got to be something you see that you could take.
I'd say honestly less than you might expect.
Okay.
Because a lot of our client work will sort of be like, especially if it's like for corporates, it's not a novel product per se, but it's like we need this for our business, we need a channel for our customers or whatever, something like that.
I don't know. I would argue to find that common thread. Maybe there's something in between the lines.
Well, actually, we look at opportunities in terms of maybe productizing like some of the technology.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe that's an obvious. I mean, it's not even secret. Like a lot of companies do that.
Yeah.
So we could kind of explore that. It requires focus, like maybe a bit more focus.
Resources
you
and
might
focus.
Expect, because to do something well for one project, it's okay. But to do something well that you can productize and use in lots of projects, and other people can use in lots of projects, that's a whole. Well,
I guess that's also the weakness of your choice of going for sustainable. I mean, it was a function of force. You needed to do it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be here talking today.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Potentially.
But at the same time, the way that business model scales doesn't almost allow for extra resources, because it's almost linear. More clients means more engineers, bigger space.
When we say scale for ourselves, I mean, for our business model, it's more projects, more people, one new project.
Does it get to a point of economic scale where you can get better margin, or is it always going to be fixed?
There's definitely more margin, but I wouldn't say it's not like an order of magnitude. Okay, we get more efficient.
So that's what you mean by you're saying you should have enough to make small bets at least.
Yeah. But
so it's with smaller resources, because by nature of the model doesn't allow for much.
Yeah, when you got a team of 5, you just need a project, maybe nonstop, right? For everyone. But when you got a team of 50, if there are 2 or 3 people idling, it's probably still okay.
That's fair. So if they're idling, you could invest a little bit.
Yep.
And say it gets any traction, then you could go out and raise separate funds for it actually then.
Yep.
So that's kind of a nice little model you got there.
Yep. This is inspired by a lot of other agencies that kind of...
So they're kind of doing this.
Break out and do... Yeah. I say typically a lot, they're going to choose 2 paths. So one's the more like a bit more ambitious, and then you really need a bit of funding to get the product out there. Yeah. And then one's the maybe more smaller scale, like, idea for a SaaS kind of thing.
A SaaS in what respect?
SaaS, like, here's a tool to help write email templates for you that, like 1,000 people in the world are going to find useful. And if you talk about like addressable market size or something, you probably don't see anything interesting from a VC perspective.
I mean, you're talking about chasing an idea versus maybe following a pain point.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I guess if it's small bets, you could chase the ideas.
They're a bit bigger.
But it's a game of volume and time.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But if you have a real pain point, I would say just go for that.
Yep. I mean, if your appetite is more like the older we get, the older the company gets, the more like semi-jaded we get. But we'd be pretty happy if we had a product that wasn't necessarily revolutionary per se.
But good success, good financial success.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And when I talk good financial success, it's really, MRR that like feeds a team plus, some profits.
I think that's honestly, that's a good starting point. You should kind of focus there, but I wouldn't undersell yourself. We're talking about the next 5 to 10 years, 60% of the middle class will be coming from Asia.
No, that's true.
We're talking about massive growth, and it's underserved in terms of SaaS and underserved in terms of problems. So, and like having the skill set you have, if you could be a little bit more aggressive, even though it's just smaller bets and just getting them out there, I think over the next 10 years, you're going to hit something.
Right.
You just got to do it, and adopt that mindset.
Yep. That's a very, compelling way of putting it, I think, actually.
Because it's right, man. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And then SnappyMob's going to unfurl on his own. You're going to, you'll get there. Don't be too jaded.
Yes.
I always am more positive than not, though.
Yes.
So. Okay. Is there anything else you want to plug before we wrap up?
No. I mean, like,
I'm so sorry.
I will plug this podcast.
Thank you.
I think it's a very, for me, it was fun, but it's a very interesting set of interviews you've done before this. And
you're definitely adding to it, and I really appreciate. I stole way too much of your time.
Yep.
I took advantage. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
But I really appreciate it, though.
Cool.
Thank you for supporting.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hey, listeners! Thanks for listening to another episode of EOA. So, what can we learn today? If you're looking for a software engineer, make sure they have self-interest and drive, which is often demonstrated in personal projects where they have solved problems that would have allowed them to grow and experience various different kinds of contexts. You can also see if they have demonstrated ways where they have helped others in specific domains that not many people are familiar with. For example, one of Alan's projects, Kiwi, a test-driven development library, was picked up by the likes of big companies such as Lyft and others. And further, he demonstrated answering hard questions related about what he was building in places like Stack Overflow. In addition, it's a common theme for great writing to be a strong signal of someone who has clear communication and thought, which is a very important aspect of software engineering because the discipline converges to people where many of the problems actually are. While you may never know 100% as a non-technical person if someone is truly a great software engineer, it's possible to increase your probabilities by finding the right signals, and it would be critical for you to lean on someone you trust to help validate your findings. Also, the framing of shipping fast versus collecting data, it's an inescapable truth, it seems. The faster you ship, the more debt you will have. And the better way to think about it is the consequence and impact and associated probabilities of certain types of debt, as it's very much possible to massively take on technical debt with no impact to business consequences, where it will get solved through other resources and means in the future. And it's equally possible to slowly pace technical debt with a consistent tempo of shipping product, as it will highly depend on context and goals in the team. We will have to stay tuned to SnappyMob to see if they hit a massive success in one of their small bet moonshots or get client work that will allow them to build products that will reach hundreds of millions of users one day. See you guys back here for next week's episode.